Hey, 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 what's going on, y'all? Gotta let it breathe. We're live, but yes, and I'm using like the royal we in this case. As you can see, my co host and partner in crime, Zack Kelberman, not with me at the moment, but he will be here. And we are good. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me right now is not Zack Kelberman. He's running late. He's got some things that have kept him from being able to be here right this moment, but probably the next 10, 15 minutes or so, you'll see him right next to me as per the usual. Tonight, some interesting topics to get into. It's kind of a sleepy weekend relative to like any meaningful Broncos news, but there are a couple of things that we're going to get into, including Broncos kicking off OTAs this week and a little something from the odds makers. But while we're kind of waiting on Zach, say some hellos here. David Youngkin looks like was first so far on the, or at least from what I can see on the StreamYard side. First comment in the chat today on YouTube. It's great to see you, buddy. DTR's in the house. The Papa Bear jumped in early with a super. Much love and respect to the Papa Bear, as he is known, David McElrath, who is going to, by the way, be on the show. Superstar segment Monday, April 29th. It's going to be dope. Really excited for that. And then tomorrow, on the 15th, we have the one and only Naj Altaf joining for the show. We're not going to have a superstar segment next week because it's draft week and I just want to keep schedules open and flexible. But that's going to be par for the course moving forward, having these guest segments with you guys, with the community, superstar segments coming on. A lot of fun. Looking forward to that, David. Thank you for the super, big dog. DTR with his super chat jumping in, saying, and thank you, by the way, my brother, says, evening, Chad, Zach, Scott, and Dylan. I agree with the article Chad posted a little while ago. And the odds makers, hashtag Bo knows, hashtag MHH for life. Thank you, big dog, on multiple fronts. What DTR is getting at today, I kind of had a busy weekend. Normally, everything I do on a weekend, I can do my job and publish and write articles and be available for podcasts, whatever. 99% of the time. But every once in a while, I have events, whether it's like kids, sports out of town, some band stuff, this and that, here and there, to where I'm like just away and untethered. And I hate it, honestly. I hate not having my laptop right here ready to go, being able to jump on, write an article, da 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 da. But it's also not necessarily always the healthiest way to live. Scott could tell you, with a laptop glued to your hip basically 24/7. I have a great wife and a great family. They're cool with it. They understand how the sausage gets made. But I wasn't around. There's a long story short. Today, finally, I got some time. Good to see you, Ronk. Appreciate you, big dog, as you know. And I wanted to write up this article about the odds makers, which I want to get Zach's take on this, obviously, once he jumps on. But according to FanDuel, shocker, surprise, surprise, the Denver Broncos are the odds-on favorite to land Bo Nix. That is followed by the Raiders and Giants tied at plus 700 odds, but the Broncos are minus 20 favorites to land Nix. And in this article, I basically just lay out 4 reasons why the odds makers are as high on the prospect of Nix being a Bronco as they are. And we'll get into some of them as today inches closer, but yeah, or as inches farther. But that's the way it's looking. Shocker, surprise. But some interesting points, though, I want to get to, because it's not just, oh, yeah, Nix pick 12. Yeah. Obviously, there are a few reasons that are worth talking about why his name keeps coming up. Gary, up there north of the 49th parallel, you're proven in this very moment, my friend, that Broncos country is not a geographic location. It is, in fact, a state of being. He says, who do you see as a better football player between Nix or Michael Penix Jr. in 3 years? If one of the two is drafted by our Broncos. Thank you from Montreal, French Canada. Much love and respect to the French Canadians, the Quebecois up there. A lot of great friends up in Quebec, for what it's worth, and just that sector. So I guess I need to learn me a little French, huh? But honestly, these two players relative to their NFL outlook aren't that far apart. I would probably, if Nix lands in the right place, like Denver would be one of the good spots for him. But if he lands in a fortuitous space relative to the coaching fit, talent around him, stuff like that, I could see his ceiling being ridiculously high. Penix, though, I think his ceiling, just because that arm talent, he's got a cannon hanging off the left side of his shoulder, or his left shoulder. I could see him being a thing, but he is a southpaw. He does come with the injury concerns. I like it. I'll answer your question this way, Gary. Which, by the way, I love it. Gary, blah blah. I like the future for the Broncos. To me, would look a little bit brighter if it was Nix instead of Penix. Which one ends up being the better football player 3 years from now? I mean, I think Nix is the more rounded player, but Penix does have the bigger arm. So we shall see, my friend. Thank you, big dog. We have from the top rope. Golly, I just like slobber knockered there for a second. The Duchess, Michaela Parker, with a very generous super chat. She is near and dear to our hearts, as you know. We love Michaela. She's royalty here at MHH, and hats off to you. Seriously, it's been a minute since I had a chance to do that and just say that, but I love you. Seriously, Michaela. Sometimes you just like knock the words out of my brain and I kind of get stunned. I don't know what to say, but love you so much. She says, thank you for all you guys do. It really makes a difference, at least in my life. Love the heck out of all of you. I am warming up on the idea of Knicks. Yeah, well, trust me. You guys and you, Michaela, make a big difference in my life. And I know speak for Scott. I can speak for Zach. And honestly, like, and it's not just like it's not in any way, shape, or form kind of a transactional relationship where it's like, yeah, we get to stand up here and talk about the Broncos and answer your questions. That's not what it is. It's about the fact that we build friendships, relationships. You contribute to the conversation, and so many times, like the takes and the opinions, and even sometimes the questions that we get in the chat, like I either learn something or I'm forced to kind of look at things from a different angle, and it's just, I don't know. I love it. It's a living, breathing phenomenon. It's a living, breathing, organic community here at MHH. And as DTR says, Michaela, the real MVP. And, there's also the component that, it does, when we talk about, hey, helping us keep the lights on, that's a real thing, and especially in today's day and age. I don't know about you guys. I assume those of you in the chat, you're podcast listeners, generally speaking. Obviously, you're big Broncos fans, but you like listening and participating in podcasts. So I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that this isn't the only podcast in the world that you follow. It might be on multiple subjects. You might be a big fan of movies. You watch movie podcasts, politics, whatever it might be. But like, something about our community, it's like we're all in this together. And it's not something we take lightly, the fact that you guys are so outgoing in your support for us relative to super chats and donations and whatnot. And it does allow us to continue to do what we do and keep doing what we do and add new shows. And when I got things cooking, it would be real easy to say, oh, I'm going to take a Monday night off, I'm going to take a Wednesday night off, whatever. I never do that. Never is an absolute. I rarely do that. And if I do, I'll find someone to step in for me, because the show must go on for you guys. When's the last time outside of Christmas, outside of, I think maybe a Thanksgiving or two, the last couple of years, that you maybe expected a show on a given night and there's nothing? It doesn't happen. There will always be a show, and that's because of the support you guys give us. It allows us not only the means to do that, but it drives us to ensure that you always get a conversation from 6 to 7 Mountain Time, 7 days a week. Troy, Michaela, love you so much, and you know this. And Bo Nix, I'm glad to hear you're warming up to the idea. Troy, my dog, the Fawn Donkey, as he's known on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Appreciate you, my friend. He says, I can't listen now, but wanted to support. Any quarterback Sean Payton likes is fine by me if taken at 12 or later. So clearly, Troy's not here for the let's trade up and grab JJ or trade up and grab Drake May thing. And I hear you on that. Really, for me, it's just about whatever the quarterback or two, it might be more than two, my quarterback 2 or 3, however many quarterbacks Sean Payton feels confident he could build a franchise around, whatever you gotta do to it might be hard to guarantee getting one of those guys, but whatever you can do to really increase the odds and likelihood that you do, that's what I'm here for. And if in this case it did require, like, let's say Bo Nix isn't a Sean, one of those guys that Sean Payton believes he could build a franchise around. Well, and the last guy is JJ. Maybe there's only two guys. I don't know. Just as an example. Well, then it does require you move up if you want to improve those odds. And I would be for it, to be honest with you. Would it be my first thing? Would it be something I'm just like sitting here pining for? I just hope the Broncos trade away more first round picks. No, but I also understand we go back to the same old of, you know, how many Super Bowl did Von Miller deliver without a quarterback? How many playoff berths did the Broncos get from Justin Simmons, Patrick Surtain? You need those quality players, especially at the cornerstone positions like edge, corner, etc. But you can't put the cart before the horse. Not to say that they don't matter without a quarterback, but they become significantly less impactful and meaningful to the overall thing if you don't first have a franchise quarterback. So as an imperative for a team, it's pretty clear, man. If you don't have one, quote my friend Cecil Lammey, it's a got man league, the NFL. And you either got your man or you don't. And if you don't got your man, I know that's poor grammar, but if you don't got your man, you got to do whatever it takes to get it. Otherwise, we see what the otherwise is. We've lived it for the past 8 years, right? So, my hope is this, to be honest with you, I I like Knicks enough, I see the fit enough that I'm cool with the Broncos just staying at 12 and just taking Bo Nix. If you trade back, I don't think he'll be there. Even if you trade back to 19, I don't think he'll be there. Or at least there's a good chance he won't be there because the Raiders. Why? Because the Raiders. Chilling at 13. Um, Definitely in the quarterback business. They need a quarterback. Uh, but they're also the kind of team where it wouldn't surprise me if they go no Penix and then Bo Nix is there for you at 19. But I still think Nix goes first in this draft compared to Penix. String guy, what's up, bro? He says, Chad, can you evaluate Nix's arm strength and talent just like a guitar player? You either have it or you don't. However, in a Payton system, the QB will have to study the music, right? Or football theory, LOL. I'm the wrong guy to talk to about theory, just because I never took lessons and everything I know how to play. Like if you listen to Bridge the Gap, all that music that I wrote. So I learned how to do that stuff by ear and just whatever natural knack that I had. And so my brother, Derek, shout out Derek, a couple years back, he's like, hey, check out these YouTube channels of these great creators that like teach theory and stuff. Like one really famous guy, string guy, I'm sure is like Rick Beato. If you don't know that name, check him out, especially if you are a theory guy. He goes, check this out, my brother. And I watch a couple videos and I would get like 2 or 3 minutes in and I would just X out because something about learning the theory. I didn't want to screw up whatever my little vibe is with the source that gives me the music that I get. I didn't want to like all of a sudden know how the sausage is made. If I could just like whip out the ingredients and have a tasty sausage dish, whatever, that's cool. I don't necessarily need to know all the little things, so I backed off. But to your point here, your question of theory, Nix's arm strength, it's mid. His arm strength is mid, but he does have arm talent in the sense that, like, dude he can spin it. He can get it there. Unlike Penix, like, in when people talk about arm strength, what they mean by that, Penix is more like, and by the way, Zach, as soon as you're ready to go, Zach's gearing up. He's just pop on. You know what to do. Penix is, the more traditional arm talent guy. But Nix has enough. That's really it. It's kind of like Drew Brees. Drew Brees had enough arm strength. Zach, what's going on, bro?
All this talk about sausage, Chad, I'm hungry now. I agree with your assessment.
That joke could have gone somewhere else. I'm glad it didn't. So
I'm actually keeping it G-rated today, surprisingly. But your assessment on Bo Nix is accurate, as we've been talking about for quite a while. Not the strongest arm, but the other intangible qualities that he possesses is, I think, attractive to someone like Sean Payton.
Indeed. And, a few of them, I mean, I'll just list them real quick. Zach, I want to throw a few of these off of you. Like, why is Bo Nix the leader in the clubhouse as far as the odds makers are concerned to land with the Broncos? Well, first and foremost is the pragmatic availability thing, right? Like he's projected to be the fifth quarterback off the board. He'll probably be there at 12. So there's that.
Right.
Two, the fit with the Broncos. We talk about Sean Payton's imperative for the quick processor, someone that reads and diagnoses information quickly. And, as a quarterback, that means as it's presenting itself in real time, like you have to not only process that information in the moment, but also read and cue and just make the decisions based off it accurately. He's good with that. Operated that system quarterback at Oregon, but I say that in the best sense. Like, man, he made that system his what. Like he mastered that, master and command or poise, command, checks those boxes. As far as play style, Zach, I have a hard time finding another quarterback in this class that is a better fit from just play style with Peyton than Nick's.
Yeah. And the reasons that you listed, I feel like some fans that aren't fans of him they use those as detracting points. Like, oh, because he'll be available, that means he's not one of the highest rated quarterbacks, or because he's a good processor, it means he doesn't have the strongest arm. These aren't bad things. I mean, if he can fit in this specific square, if it's not forcing a square cube in a round hole, if he's a square cube. Is that right? A square cube? Does that make
Square
sense?
peg. It's all
Square
good.
peg. There we go. You know what I'm trying to say here. If it works for Sean Payton, that's what I'm trying to say. If it works for Sean Payton, that's all that matters. It might not work for another team, might not work for Minnesota or the Giants or whoever, but if it works for Denver, that's all that matters, Chad.
Exactly. And I like that fit. Then you have, Zach, the Brees comparisons, right? In terms of why is Nick's so tied to the Broncos? Why are the odds makers loving him? You do have that Brees comparison, and there have been multiple let's just call them, either draft or quarterback guru types that have made that comparison. Joel Klatt's one of them, off the top of my head. I'm trying to think of some others, but the comparisons are pretty apt for the most part, Zach, with a couple of exceptions. Obviously, everybody starts getting their what's in a wad when you compare an unproven prospect with a future Hall of Famer or Hall of Famer. And I get that, but like, hey, get off your high horse. That's what we're here to do is, we're comparing guys. We're talking about how things line up, what they share in common. I would say that, arm talent's pretty much the same as far as strength is concerned. Platform stuff, we talk about arm talent. I would actually give maybe the edge a little bit to Bo Nix because of the athleticism component. He is a significantly better athlete than Drew Brees. And that's not to take anything away from Drew. Drew was a stud at Purdue. But I think Bo Nix has that on Brees, and then we'll grab Danny.
You're right. It doesn't have to be Lamar Jackson, but neither is Patrick Mahomes. And I'm not saying Bo Nix is Mahomes, but the maneuverability in the pocket. Drake May is really good at that. Caleb Williams is really good at that. But Bo Nix in his own right is really good at that, if only because he's such a supercomputer that he knows where the pressure is going to be coming from, which offensive lineman is going to break down, and where he needs to go with the ball to avoid trouble. So that's why
Right.
I'm a fan of his. We got Danny Powers saying, I say we get our guy in Bo Nix and finally get this offense going for once and get defensive later in the draft. And George hopping in, adding, I'm not a Bo Nix fan, but if the coach wants him, then I'll root for him. But I kind of hope he's not the one, DB4L. The dichotomy of opinion, Chad, on Bo Nix is so glaring this time of year. It's literally split in half. Half of Broncos country would like him, half of Broncos country wants nothing to do with Bo Nix. But there's a lot, if you just boil down the tape, there's a lot to like about him if he is indeed the pick at 12 or wherever.
I think football fans in general, but especially Broncos fans, and I'm not taking shots at anybody here. I get it. This is my first impulse too, before I actually dig into the prospect. But when they hear Zach, he doesn't have the best arm, it's an immediate turnoff, which is understandable, right? People go, doesn't have that arm, because you're used to guys like Elway and Cutler who could throw a freaking marshmallow through a battleship, right? Like you're used to having that kind of stuff in Denver. Even Tebow, with his ridiculous windup and all that, southpaw left. That dude had a strong freaking arm that he never got credit for because it always looked so goofy and looked so painful and all that. But fans, Zach, I think are just used to that. Even Drew Lock, right?
Yeah.
Gunslinger, in terms of that is like registered deadly weapon. That dude has some strength. So when fans hear, doesn't have the arm strength or mid arm or whatever, it really, for a lot of people, they jump to that as the conclusion. But guess who else who had a mid arm? Peyton Manning had a mid arm, Hall of Fame. Joe Montana, mid arm, Hall of Fame. Drew Brees, going to be in the Hall of Fame, relatively mid arm. So how did they end up in the Hall of Fame, Zach, if they had a mid arm? I mean, how do you explain that?
Guess who had an elite arm? Maybe a Hall of Fame arm. Jamarcus Russell. I know it's a popular cliche, but
True.
the guy who's kneeling on the 20-yard line and can throw the length of the field, how did that avail him? It didn't. It's not the end all be all. It's kind of like Pro Football Focus, and it's a nice complementary tool to use, but it's not the end all be all to form an opinion. It's nice to have an elite arm, but you don't need one to succeed in the NFL. And to your point, Chad, a lot of quarterbacks haven't had one and still succeeded at the highest levels in the
Yeah.
NFL.
Think about this. And so, like George, for example, Michaela earlier with a very generous super chat, she's like, I'm coming around on Bo Nix. But for those of you who are not quite, have yet to come around on Nix, or maybe George, who's not loving the idea, think about like if he had if you never heard any questions about his arm, or if what you were reading in the scouting reports on top of everything that are already in these scouting reports on Bo Nix, if you also read that he had a plus arm or a big arm, is your read on him now different in terms of whether or not you would want him at pick 12? And if the answer to that is yes, ask yourself why. And then you got to decide, okay, how important is that really if all these other boxes are checked, is it as important? It's not to say that arm strength, Zach, is not important. It's just that the quarterbacks who don't have as much of a natural talent or blessing with arm strength / arm talent, they have to learn how to win in other ways. And that's like how Peyton Manning did. He had to use that big brain. Mike, brother, so good to see you. Jumping in with a super chat, I think, Zach, before you were able to jump on, he's saying, do we want to give up picks to move up to take Knicks? I don't. I'm very fearful of mortgaging our future for a possible, very possible, he says, bust. Love all you guys too. Love you, big dog. Yeah, thank you, bro. Very possible. Do you want to trade up? Well, it depends. Here's one like scenario, Zach. Tell me what you would do. Okay. 1, 2, 3 quarterbacks off the board. One picks 1, 2, and 3. All right. JJ McCarthy goes like 5, 4. Let's say 4, just for my theory. And then all of a sudden, Minnesota trades up to 5 because they just panicked. They missed out on JJ or whatever, and they take. It's not going to happen this way. This is just an example. And they take Bo Nix, or you're worried they're going to take Bo Nix, etc. No, not 5. But let's say you're just worried that Bo Nix isn't going to be there at 12. Do you move up to 8 to get him? I guess I overcomplicated this. If you're worried he's not going to be there because everybody else is gone, do you move up to, say, Atlanta? Because that wouldn't necessarily cost you an arm and a leg. It would cost you, but not like more in the sense when we talk about mortgaging a future.
God, man, that's really difficult. It's like, I can tell you what I think, and I can tell you what Sean Payton would think. I would not move up right now for Bo Nix. If he falls to 12, I'll be the first one to run his card to the podium. I'm just not quite there yet. I'd move up for JJ. I'd move up for Drake May. I'd move up for Jaden Daniels if Sean Payton wanted him. I'm not there on Bo Nix. If he fell, great. It's the other thing is if Sean Payton does see him in the same tier as a May or as a JJ, and he thinks he can be a franchise quarterback, then they have to move up, Chad. They have to get the guy that Sean Payton wants. And we keep, at first it was Drake May, then it was McCarthy, the talking points of the Broncos targets, and now it's Bo Nix. And my opinion remains the same. If Sean Payton wants him, then do whatever is necessary within relative reason to get him.
Mike just saying, hey, Zach, sorry I missed you.
Mike.
Scott also in the message.
Thank you, Mike.
All good. Phil, down in Tucson, love you, big dog. Jumping in with some stars, saying good evening. Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. Michaela rocks. Yes, she does. Is there a draft schedule for MHH yet? Can't wait to get Nick and Eric going. LOL. Buckham, MHH for life. Yeah, bro, for sure. It's going to be basically the same kind of format that it's been the last couple of years, but more specifically kind of what it was last year where, um, well, there'll be 2 guys anchoring it. I expect it to be Nick, but with the baby there, he might not be as available for the whole enchilada as he was last time. To be decided, more to be revealed on that front, but 2 guys kinda anchoring. Zach and I will participate, in the first round. We'll be there Thursday night. Once the picks are in, we'll hop off to get the news out, the written news out and whatnot. But you'll have the whole every round. Guys will be streaming through every single round here at MHH. There'll be a stream, conversation, breakdowns, not just Broncos picks, right? But when you see the rivals picking and this guy going here, going there, what it means. So yeah, that'll be same old Phil, and we look forward to it.
It's one of my more anticipated pods of the year. I know you the same, Chad. It's very fun to get the expert's opinion and kind of react in real time. So can't wait, Phil. See you there.
Wasn't the very first podcast you and I did together? Maybe that wasn't the very first, but like one of the first was bringing you into like this was when we were still recording a conversation, edit this, edit that, and then upload it to an RSS feed. You guys would listen on demand, download it, listen, whatever, Apple Podcast. This is before we started doing it as a live stream every time. But Zach, if memory serves, I'm talking like episode 2 at the latest of you being on the pod with me. Wasn't it the roundtable war room with like Eric and Nick and all the guys?
It might have been. If my memory serves, we joined
18.
forces in free agency of 2018. So the draft was the next month, and that was maybe there was an acclimation period to get me in the podcast. Maybe I'm remembering it differently, but you're probably right.
No, the one thing I'll say for sure on that is we didn't transition from Scout over to CBS 24/7 Sports till April.
Oh, so you're right then. This is the first major pod, the war.
Yeah. Anyway,
That's why I
good
like it so
times,
much.
and time flies, and that was 2018. It's crazy, man, because it feels like it was yesterday. You know what I mean?
6 years.
Wild. Lot of
0
water.
playoff games.
Yeah, true, but it's
0 franchise quarterbacks.
It's coming. Good things come to those who wait. Keith, what's up, bro? Good to see you, Big Dog. He says great article, Chad, but there's lots of skepticism from Broncos country and experts on Bo Nix. Yeah, for sure, bro. Like again, the whole skepticism thing though comes down on the Bo Nix subject. Really to the arm talent thing. Like not that he has no arm. He can play quarterback, but that he doesn't have a plus arm. He's kind of got a mid arm, but he checks so many of the other boxes. If it was any other coach but Payton, like again, I hate to, if it was Vic Fangio, I'd probably err more on the side of like, hey, like get one of these toolsy guys because you're going to probably see a heinous turnover at offensive coordinator in the coming years. So you need a guy that can kind of roll with those punches. The tools stay the same, but he can roll with the punches and kind of learn scheme as he goes. With Nix, though, he's such a fit for Payton, scheme wise, philosophy wise, all that stuff that like I just don't worry about it. If he drafted him, that's a Sean Payton rubber stamping it. This is my guy. I'm here for that. And I like his upside. I really do. Peyton Manning, Zach, former number 1 overall pick, never had the strongest arm, but it was all these other intangibles that he brought to the table that made him that Hall of Fame guy that he is. And maybe Bo Nix doesn't have that same Zach cachet or whatever. Some of the leadership stuff, like I mean, Peyton Manning was a serious freak of nature and maniacal in his preparation and stuff. And like it, did you ever watch The Last Dance, Zach? Like, remember during the pandemic, Netflix unveiled The Last Dance with Jordan and the Bulls? Like I rewatched that once, probably like once a year. And I'm not even like I hated Michael Jordan at that time. I hated Michael Jordan and the Bulls because he was like everywhere. I was like, oh, dude, I hate Michael Jordan and like, cringe for me. I respected him. It was like, again, we go back to get him to the Greek, it was a hateful respect. But anyway, I rewatched The Last Dance and, once a year or so, and I'm doing it, in fact, right now, like nighttime, wife goes to sleep, whatever. Netflix comes on. I'm finishing that series again. But I'm right now, Zach, in the middle of this section. There's a point to this. Trust, money, hang tight, big dog. Where he's talking about, he's obviously getting asked by the filmmakers, like about what it cost him relationship wise with his teammates to be as maniacal and crazy to the point where he's crossing the line with his teammates, competitive and just like win at any cost mentality. And you could tell, like in retrospect, he knows it cost him some friendships. He knows it cost him maybe bonding with guys more than it and this and that. Because he got a little misty eyed at a certain point, but at the end of the day, he doesn't apologize for it. He goes, "Look, dude, we brought home 6 rings. We were at the time only the third NBA team ever to win 3 championships in a row, and he did it twice. He makes no apologies, but that was that same kind of maniacal that Peyton had, right? With the game of football, and so maybe that does separate him, say, from amongst other things, from like a prospect like Bo Nix.
Yeah, for sure. I want to get to money more in just 1 second. The criticism, though, about Bo Nix, I feel like a lot of people, even his critics, recognize his processing and the stuff he does really well. I think the overall worry, though, and again, chat, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Bo Nix is maxed out as a prospect, is that you have a pretty high floor, but not a very high ceiling. And you want a quarterback to obviously grow and develop. But I don't know that that's necessarily true. So many quarterbacks that had a big ceiling like Trey Lance never worked out. A lot of other quarterbacks that had a high floor, like Brock Purdy, for example, later round pick, workout. It's a lot to do with the system that they're in and the coach that they're working with and the play calls that they're groomed by in their rookie year. And this is the one instance. Maybe the criticism of Bo Nix would be appropriate on another team. I don't think it would apply to the Broncos and Sean Payton.
By the way, I was just reminded of something because we were talking about a Keith Brugman. Keith, the original date that we had, because Keith's going to appear on a Superstar segment. The original date we had dialed in for you to join the show, I'm going to be reaching out to you to reschedule that for like early May. So look for a message from me later tonight so that we can just get that locked in. Okay. All right, Scott, money more. Sorry to make you wait so long, bro. And thank you for your patience. Is Sean Payton's future in Denver tied to this next QB? You bet your ass. Yes. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Very much so. Remember this, guys. When Sean Payton stood up and said, confirmed the reports that had broken earlier that morning that he is benching Russell Wilson. Later on in that, as he's fielding the questions of disbelief and whatnot, he's like, look, it's a football decision. And if I don't make this decision now and what's best for the team, it's going to be somebody else up here standing and talking to you guys before too long. So, yeah, he understands that, jury's out on his tenure. He hasn't won anything yet in Denver. I mean, he did move the needle. He improved the win total by 3, but you still missed out on even sniffing the dance. It was a lot of drama in year 1, thanks to the Russ thing and all that stuff, Zach. I mean, a really ugly start, all that. He wore out his honeymoon period with the fans, like immediately extinguished it by benching Russ. And so, yeah, you gotta. Yeah, dude, it's very much tied to this next quarterback, which also perhaps Zach complicates the decision. Like he knows that. So if he's not fully gung ho on a prospect A or whatever prospect the Broncos have a feasible shot at landing, then you can really talk yourself out of pulling the trigger, understandably, thus then relegating yourself back to the dustbin and the doldrums of the NFL for another year. And do you survive that?
2023 was a honeymoon. We can throw that away. It was a honeymoon because it was his first season. It was a honeymoon because he inherited a quarterback that he didn't mesh with in Russell Wilson. Okay, that's over with. Now the clock starts ticking in 2024. He gets 3 years from this point of demarcation from the rebuilding period, 3 years to get it right, I feel. And any quarterback he takes in the first round, whether it's Bo Nix or McCarthy or Drake May, whoever he gets, if he gets a first round quarterback, that clock will tick a little faster. So yes, money more, his future in Denver, and really his reputation, Chad, as an NFL coach in the post Brees era is tied to this next quarterback, because you can say that he failed with Russell Wilson. That is going to count against him. He's going to want to get it right with the rookie. If he fails, it's another black mark, and I don't see him coming back from that. The whispers of, oh, well, he only was so successful because Brees carried him. There might be some truth to that if this rookie were to fail.
Bite your tongue, Zach, or at least touch wood as you say this right now. Mark McDonald jumping in. Thank you, bro. It's good to see you. This is a guy, Mark McDonald. Obviously, we recognize, we know, goes back quite a ways with us on Facebook. So great to see you, my friend. And thank you for the support. He says, I'll take a mid arm guy who can be a pocket passer, scramble when needed, and most importantly, moves the chains with relatively low interceptions versus an elite arm who can't do any of that. Right. That's what I'm saying. Right. Here's the other thing. Dude is an athlete. Um, Wild guess, Zach, off the top of your head, how many rushing touchdowns did Bo Nix have as a collegiate athlete?
In his career? Ooh, I don't
I
know.
only know this off the top of my head because I wrote the article today.
30.
A lot closer than I thought you were going to be. 38, dog.
Damn.
Now, keep in mind, he's literally the most experienced quarterback to ever leave the collegiate ranks. The most career starts in NCAA Division I was a record held by two quarterbacks. Colt McCoy, Texas; Kellen Moore, Boise State. 53 career starts. Your boy Bo Nix obliterated that. Got the 61 starts. So a lot of sample size there, right, Zach, to build up 38 touchdowns, and it's over 5 years, right? 3 at Auburn, 2 at Oregon, but still 38 touchdowns. You look at this dude and you read scouting reports on him. They don't talk enough about his athleticism and his ability to run around, and he's got that in him. He just doesn't have that Mahomes rocket, But all these other things he's talking about, think about how important Mark is here, how important it is, Zach, just the fact that he is a pocket passer. Like, how many nights sleep did Sean Payton lose over the anger and disgust and anxiety of, Russ, just get the ball out when you hit the back foot. You should know where the ball's going based on the play that you have ingrained in your memory and whatever your pre-snap read was and adjustments. You don't need to see it, and it doesn't need to be 3 feet of wide open for, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 before you decide it's safe to throw the ball. That for a coach who's used to operating on a high level with a guy like Brees, that was ugh, I bet he just hated it.
Yeah, I mean, since we're on Russ, I'm looking up his numbers in his career. He has 29 rushing touchdowns since he entered the league in 2012. So I never would have guessed that, Chad. Pretty impressive factoid about Bo Nix. And speaking of Russell Wilson, the arm strength debate. Russell Wilson has one of the best deep balls in NFL history. I mean, his arm strength is not in question. How much did that help the Broncos or Wilson the last couple years? Not much, because as Mark was saying there, he couldn't do anything else. He couldn't hit the middle of the field. He couldn't find his second or third read. You have to have a quarterback that can do a little of everything, Chad. A master of none and finish the expression?
Master, jack of all
Trades, master of none.
none.
There you go. Thank you.
Mike jumping in again. Thank you, bro. He says, I do not think any of these QBs are blue chippers. Tell me one of these guys that's an Elway, Marino, Manning coming out of this draft. Just an example is, as good of a player as Caleb Williams is, he's short. Just saying. I got to remind myself. Hold on. 6'1". So he's not short. He's a couple inches shy of the NFL preferred prototype. But Elway was 6'3". It's not like he was Peyton Manning 6'5". Elway loved drafting those giraffes, right? Paxton Lynch 6'7".
Osweiler
was Osweiler 7 or 6'8"? Anyway, whatever. A lot gets made out of that, and there is some truth to it. Honestly, this, make myself look worse here, but for the longest time, I was like, man, height gets just so blown out of proportion. Obviously, it's better to have a quarterback who's good that has a little height than one who doesn't. But it wasn't until Russ got here and I actually had to every day, my job is to analyze this dude, where I realized actually height can make a big, big difference. But it's not just that it limits, it's that it's on a player by player basis, because you look at Drew Brees. Yeah, he would get some batted balls and whatnot, but it didn't, his height and his sometimes limited vision with the lanes, right? Because you have these 6'5", 6'6". I mean, Mike McGlinchey's 6'9". You have these massive 5 guys blocking for you every snap. You got to get really good at trusting your vision through these different lanes. Drew Brees did. for whatever reason, Zach Russ never got comfortable. He had to see it wide. I mean, he had to
Yeah.
see it like unencumbered view of what was in front of him to really feel confident in pulling the trigger. So height can play a big deal, a big part, Zach, but it is very individual in terms of player by player basis. Shorter quarterbacks.
Yeah, if he wasn't comfortable, he just launched a 50-50 prayer to Cortland Sutton, hope it's completed. But we
Yeah.
have Lawrence Rivera hopping in. Thank you so much, Lawrence, $5 super. He says, Mike's not lying. I don't even see one QB record touched at the combine. I could really be wrong, though. That's a big comment. Yeah, I mean, Mike said there's no blue chippers in this draft, right? And I think there are, it's all relatively speaking, and it's all subjective. I mean, to a blue chipper to you is not a blue chipper to me, and vice versa. I think they're all blue chippers in this class, but they're not any generational prospects. And I know a lot of people hate that term, but there's no Andrew Luck or Trevor Lawrence or whoever in this class, but there are in this class, relatively speaking, elite prospects.
I don't know, man. It's hard to say. Like, I know that people said it and it became quickly like a derisive term, but do you recall in 2018 that quarterback class that they called the Hall of Fame class or
Yeah.
whatever? And it was kind of tongue in cheek. I give them that, but still, who in that class was anybody saying future Peyton, future Elway, future, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
I'm really asking. I don't recall it being said about any of them. And what are we looking at here? How many went? 5, right? Qs in that first round. Baker Mayfield, he's kind of earning back some cachet in Tampa, but it was looking rocky for a minute there. I mean, Josh Allen is looking like probably the guy that is going to end up making that class look the best. Lamar, if he could just get his what together in the playoffs, for
Yeah.
crying out loud. I mean, people used to say about Peyton Manning before 2004, yeah, great regular season quarterback, but can't make it in the playoffs. You can't win the big one. And then he finally did, and all that stuff went away. You just need to do it one time, Lamar. Get a victory in the playoffs one time that moves the needle, give you some confidence, move forward a little bit, and then you can get that monkey off your back. But Dennis, yeah, dude, he says, and thank you, Dennis. I may have said this before. Arm strength is overrated. Not many 40 to 50 yards in the air passes per game. Short, intermediate passes are what move the chains. Very true. And I'm not saying this to like collapse my own arguments here this evening, but you got to have a guy. I think it's, if you're going to go, what am I prioritizing here, Zach? A Russ who's just got a laser deep ball. So when the time comes, you've got a better than average chance at connecting on those shots. Or a guy who can be very proficient, as Dennis says here, in the short to intermediate aspect, because it's not just about arm strength. When we talk short intermediate, it's about if you're prolific and proficient there, it's because you've mastered a lot of the other stuff. You did your preparation, you did your pre-snap, you're probably a good decision maker, you've got your quick processor, and you're accurate. So the ball's coming out on time where it needs to go more often than not. There's more tools that you have mastered to be a proficient short to intermediate guy. You have now mastered more of the tools than it takes to just be a good deep ball guy, strong arm, can push it down the field guy per se. So that to me, I gravitate a little bit more to that. Even though just like you guys, I grew up, in the shadow of the Elway arm thing, right? Like reading the articles in Sports Illustrated about how every starting wide receiver who ever caught passes from John Elway suffered broken fingers at some point in their time, and how you kind of romanticize that arm strength. I get it. It's better to have than not have it in like a vacuum. But when you, Zach, weigh it against some of the implications of short to intermediate proficiency, I think the answer becomes pretty obvious.
For anyone who thinks that a quarterback needs an elite arm to be successful, I literally will point you in the direction of Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. If you watch a Chiefs game in the post Tyreek Hill era, especially, it's not Mahomes launching 40, 50, 60-yard bombs. It's Mahomes nickel and diming a defense, slicing and dicing 3, 5, 7-yard hits, keeping the chains, the down and distances manageable, 2nd and 1, 3rd and 2, something like that. If you have a 15-play drive to get to the end zone for a touchdown, it's not all going to happen in one chunk. You have to stay yourself ahead of the chains, keep yourself on schedule, and make it easier downs. That's where your running game comes into play. And that's not why you don't get to 3rd and 15, 3rd and 18. So you're forced into a passing situation. It's all simpatico, Chad. That's why it's the ultimate team sport. And that's why if the quarterback can understand his assignment and keep the offense on schedule because you have a good running game, you don't need that elite arm, in my opinion.
Well said. Phil, jumping in again, guys, what's the outlook on Garrett Bowles? Do we need to draft a replacement? Yes. Do you need to draft a replacement at 12 instead of a quarterback? No. Got to get that quarterback. But
Unless you trade Bulls.
he's going in, Zach, to a contract year. And as you know, it doesn't appear that he's getting moved, but you don't say, you never say never when you're this close to the draft, because there's that possibility he could be like included in a draft package or something, even though I don't really see it. But still, contract year, he's old. You need to at least, maybe not like a bona fide replacement, like you're christened as the next guy replacement, but a guy you can develop plausibly with moderate expectations of being able to step in next year.
Or how about just a tackle? A living,
Yeah.
breathing, healthy, able-bodied tackle. They haven't drafted one since Garrett Bowles, so that'd be a good start. But no, I don't think – I agree with what you said, Chad. It'd be nice to get someone in the hopper, but unless you trade him, you are not taking one at 12.
We got George jumping again. Zach, hey, I'm with you. As I see, Bo Nix is already at his ceiling. I feel we need someone that has not reached his ceiling. Not sure who that is. Yeah, it's not an easy thing. It's like, identifying and evaluating quarterback talent, Zach, is, I do not envy these guys, because you gotta check so many different boxes to feel confident and comfortable in using a precious commodity, especially for a team like the Broncos, Zach, that is now gone. It's been 2 years since they made a first round pick. I mean, Patrick Surtain, 2021 was your last first round pick. It's like these are tough decisions. But for me, the devil's always in the details, the nuance, and the fact that Bo Nix is already close to his ceiling. Again, that would be a lot more troubling to me, Zach, if my head coach was Vance Joseph, Vic Fangio,
Yeah.
a guy who either I knew was on borrowed time, dead man walking, lame duck Arsenal head coach, versus like a proven offensive minded guy who's got some stability, and a guy who's earned some trust when it comes to, quarterbacks.
George, I appreciate you bringing this up and kind of confirming what I said. I mean, to be clear, this is not my opinion on Bo Nix. I was just referencing what I've seen in Broncos country, and some of the scouting reports about Bo Nix is that he might be maxed out as a prospect. But again, there's still a lot more you can mine, because anything that Bo Nix saw in college pales in comparison to what he can learn under Sean Payton and working in an NFL structure. I could speak for you, Chad, really quickly. I don't think he's your QB1 of this class, but he's also not someone that we're going to cry over if he's the next Broncos quarterback either. There's a lot to like about him.
Indeed. Lawrence, we need a game manager, not a star QB. But see, I agree with you in the sense that we need a game manager in the best sense of what that means. Like, hey, Peyton Manning, Hall of Fame, undeniable, amazing, otherworldly talent at quarterback, right? But like, was there a better game manager than Peyton Manning? You could maybe only point to Tom Brady. After those two guys, you could maybe only point to Drew Brees as like the best game managing quarterbacks in the NFL. That's what you want. You want a guy who's at ease, in command, poised, like managing the game, understands all the fine little nuances, things, like when Peyton Manning's calling timeout, 2012, he suffered that his first year, he had that high ankle, and you're getting down into a touch and go situation in the fourth quarter, trying to protect the 1 seed. You've been on a run, a tear, 9-10 games into your winning streak or whatever it was that year. And if you guys remember, he suffered that high ankle sprain, and that same play in which he suffered the ankle sprain, he jumps up, and it was a like flashpoint decision thing situation where it was moving the chains, or I can't remember what it was, but it's a heads up thing that he makes in the moment. Like, he's managing that game, despite the fact that his ankle is screaming at him right now, and he's going, Like, to me, I'd be on the ground going, call in the ambulance and the cavalry. Like, I'm dying here. He's going, no, 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 no. They called timeout, not us, whatever. Like, just that's a really kind of weird out of the box comparison when you talk about a game manager, because that's not the first thing I would try and I would go to. But like, that's, you want a guy who's just present at all times and in control and command of the game when they're on the field. Zach, you want to grab a mic?
Yeah, really quickly, this is the problem with putting labels on prospects, Chad. Game manager, star quarterback, whatever. If they can win football games, they can win football games, and that's who I want quarterbacking my team. We have Mike Edel here hopping in, another $5 super. Thank you so, so much, Mike. Really becoming a super strong foundational member of the podcast. He asked, what do you guys think of Joe Milton being the next Taysom Hill? And it's a pretty apt comparison. I could see that working out, though to me, Milton has a much stronger arm as a quarterback, as a passer than Taysom Hill. And here's how I feel regardless. I know Sean Payton loves some Taysom Hill. Obviously, he kind of Frankensteined Taysom Hill. I just want a quarterback that can be the understood QB1 under center. I don't want any gadgets. I don't want any sort of wildcat offenses. I just want the guy. They have a decent receiving core. The running game solid. They'll bolster that a little more. If Milton, if he can be that in the NFL, so be it. But I don't see that with the Broncos, Chad.
Scott says, by the way, if Bo Nix doesn't go to Denver, man, are those grapes going to be sour with all the mental gymnastics people have done the last month to talk themselves into Nix? Point is, I don't need to spend big to get nickels and dimes, or like what's that phrase, Zach? Step over $1 to pick up a dime or whatever, you know? And I would agree that in a sense, people have come around, or people have, that's another way to put it, like talk themselves into Bo Nix as a fit for Denver. But that phrase talking themselves into, it does imply that it's you're conjuring something out of thin air. You're lying to yourself or something, right? If you're talking yourself into it, you're lying to yourself. Not necessarily like, I have to talk myself, Zach, into going to the dentist. You know what I mean? Does that mean that the going to the dentist was the wrong decision necessarily? I know it's not apples and apples, but anyway, obviously Scott, not a Bo Nix guy round one.
Like I said, the difference of opinion on every quarterback prospect is so staggering. It's literally split down the middle. And there's a case to be made for why the Broncos should avoid Bo Nix. There's a case to be made why the Broncos should target Bo Nix. It's all in the eye of the beholder. And, my barometer is very low, Chad, heading into the draft. I am quarterback no matter what, and I am of the mind they need to come out of day one with a quarterback prospect.
Agreed. Guys, we're about out of time, so any burning topics, get it in. The chat will do our best here. I want to just see if there's any topics outside of Nix we haven't gotten tonight that's on people's minds. Great to see you, by the way, Pearl. Yeah, everyone's stoked for the draft and who gets signed as college free agents. We really look forward to that, obviously, each and every year. Kind of a different show, where I'm going solo for a few minutes and then Zach comes on, so it might not feel like you're getting the full effect tonight, but we are pretty much out of time. Ronk, thank you, brother. Zach, while you're going through a couple matters of business, I'm just going to peruse the chat for anything, and then if there's something that jumps out, we'll grab it. If not, we'll say goodnight for now and circle back tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Thank you all for tuning in with us tonight. That was the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on Twitter at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and don't forget about Scott at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch, you know what it is, where it is, mhhmerch.com. Get you some. If you haven't, please drop us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can find us on Instagram at mile_high_huddle. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like y'all.
So it's not really off the topic, it's on the beaten path, but I just want to grab this from Miles because I think he makes a fair point. Drew Brees didn't have a high ceiling. He became what he was under Sean Payton.
Exactly.
I think his ceiling was always there, Zach, but I agree with this, that in order for him to reach it, he needed a guy like Sean Payton. Most of the conversation, especially coming off the heels of Sean Payton stepping down as a head coach and retiring, right? I'm going to retire. And then all of a sudden, 1 year later, he not only does he want to come back, but then this team has to trade, get his rights, and then the whole Russ thing. And it's become really kind of trendy to start revising history and saying that Drew Brees made Sean Payton the head coach, not the other. It's very much the other way around. Now, that's not to say, Zach, that Drew Brees didn't have some successes pre-New Orleans. I mean, he did have that one Pro Bowl year. He did have that 111 win season with the Chargers. But, dude, he didn't come close to sniffing what he became as a quarterback in New Orleans. I mean, he wasn't even in the same ballpark. Even that great Pro Bowl year he had, like, good passer, very much the kind of thing you see from when a young quarterback, I don't want to say lucks out, but like things just come together for him, right place, right time, right scheme, makes the plays when they need to be made. That stats add up, the wins stack up, they get a Pro Bowl nod. Very Jay Cutler-ish 2008 in terms of how it came together for him in a Pro Bowl year, minus the wins. Like Cutler got the Pro Bowl like Brees did, but he didn't get the wins. Whereas you get to New Orleans and, it takes a couple of years for that duo to kind of get their feet underneath them, but then it was gangbusters, dude. You win a Super Bowl in 2009. Like when Drew Brees, Zach, nobody wanted him as a free agent. He was trying to make the rounds in 06. The Dolphins sniffed it. Seemed like they were close, ended up going with Culpepper and Peyton the whole time. And Mickey Loomis were like, no, come to us. We want you here. And he went, if anybody at that time would have predicted that by 2010 Drew Brees was going to be hoisting a Lombardi, not a person on the planet Earth except maybe Drew Brees and Sean Payton would have been saying that. Sean Payton, I think the fairest way to say it, Zach, is that they were just the right match for each other, period, end of story. But I do err more on what he became, Drew Brees, the quarterback, probably doesn't happen anywhere else unless he lands with Sean Payton. So what implications, what conclusions do you draw from that? I leave it up to you.
Exactly. Yeah, we talked about this a few weeks ago. Since Peyton got to Denver, the criticism is that Brees carried him. Before he came to Denver, it was that he built up Drew Brees. The fact of the matter is, I mean, I watched him for myself in both locations. Drew Brees was a very, very good quarterback in San Diego before he got to New Orleans. When he got to New Orleans, he became what he is now, which is a Hall of Famer, an elite, one of the best to ever do it. You're right. It was the perfect match. Drew Brees put that work in, but there's so much taken away from what Sean Payton has done at the NFL level with a quarterback like Drew Brees. It shouldn't count against him, Chad. It should count in his favor. And somehow that all got ski-wampus, to quote you.
All right, guys. Love you. Appreciate you. Some shouts here. We'll be back, of course, tomorrow night, but a mile-high salute and a special shout-out to the great Super Chat superstars and supporters tonight, helping us keep the lights on. The Duchess at the tippity top. So generous of you, Michaela. We love you.
Thank you, Michaela.
We got the Papa Bear, DTR, The Ronk. We got Gary up in Canada. We got Troy, Danny Powers, George Fox. We got Mike Edel, of course. We've got Money Moore. By the way, Money, didn't get a chance to say this. It's great to see you, brother. We got Lawrence Rivera. We got Dennis Woods, Mark McDonald on Facebook, Phil McLaughlin. And I think that covers everybody. So thank you so much, guys. Really fun conversation. Can't wait to do it again tomorrow night.
Have a great rest of your Sunday. We'll see you tomorrow night. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.